ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਮਾਤਾ ਤ੍ਰਿਪਤਾ ਗੁਰੂ ਘਰ ਪਲਿਮਥ ਤੇ ਨਾਥ ਪ੍ਰਗਾਸ USA ਵੱਲੋਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ 5ਵੇਂ ਸੈਸ਼ਨ ਸਿੱਖ ਵਿਮਨ ਬੁੱਕ ਕਲੱਬ ਦੇ 5ਵੇਂ ਸੈਸ਼ਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੀ ਹਾਂ। ਸਾਡੇ 4 ਸੈਸ਼ਨਸ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਨੇ ਇਨ ਦ ਪਾਸਟ। ਅਸੀਂ ਬੁੱਕ ਆਫ ਮਿਰਦਾਦ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਬੁੱਕ ਰਿਵਿਊ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ, ਕਥ ਉਪਨਿਸ਼ਦ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ, ਦ ਪ੍ਰੋਫਿਟ, ਸਪਿਰਿਟ ਬੋਰਨ ਪੀਪਲ, ਟੋਟੋ ਚੈਨ, ਦ 10 ਮਾਸਟਰਸ, ਦ 7 baskets of prose, 10 bulls, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, Sundari, Divane Shams Tabrizi. So as you see, we've covered a lot of ground and we've covered a lot of multicultural texts of significance in this forum. Extending the legacy and heritage of this forum in today's book club session, we will have 3 talks. The first one will be on Divane Goya, which is a magnum opus of Bhai Nand Lal Goya. The review will be presented by Gurpreet Kaur Sandhu. We will also have a recorded talk on Ashtavakra Gita, which was narrated by sage Ashtavakra himself. And then at the end, we will have a talk on Jeevan Ki Hai. It's a poem by Bhai Veer Singh in his work called Lehran De Haar. So with that, I'd like to invite our first speaker, Gurpreet Kaur Sandhu, to give us a book review on Divane Goya.
Vaiguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaiguru Ji Ki Fateh. So today I'm going to review Bhai Nand Lal Goya's Divane Goya. I would like to start this with one sentence that will kind of summarize the whole text, the love and devotion and sacrifice that the author feels for the Almighty, which is, Guru Gobind Singh Ji and God were one to Bhai Nand Lal Goya. Why I mean that? I'm going to explain it in my further text. As a poet, he sang of the Almighty, but for naming his qualities, he drew inspiration from Guru Gobind Singh Ji. You know, he called it as Guru Darshan, which he always mentions him as Sampuran. Bhai Nand Lal Goya, who wrote under pen name Goya, was the great exegete of Sikhism. Exegete here means an expounder or textual interpreter, especially of scripture. He occupies a unique place of honor and reverence among the Sikhs. Beside Guru Granth Sahib, our holy Sikh scripture, and next to the epics of Bhai Gurdas, Kalame Goya, the poetry of Bhai Nand Lal Goya, is considered to be the most ardent by the celebrated literary enthusiasts and the lay zealots. So apart from Guru Granth Sahib and Bhai Gurdas Bani, Bhai Nand Lal's poetry has been recited in Darbar Sahib and in Gurdwara Sahibs. So the poet laureate of Guru Gobind Singh Ji was one of the greatest exponent of Sikhism. Now, laureate here means a person who's honored with an award for outstanding creative or intellectual achievement. So he was known as the poet laureate of Guru Gobind Singh Ji. And he was one of the greatest exponent of Sikhism. His most popular ode, eulogizing Guru Gobind Singh Ji, with Nasuro Mansoor Guru Gobind Singh in Ganjaname, has been echoing in every Gurdwara and sung with devotion in the congregations. He was a versatile genius. Besides being a poet of eminence, he was an erudite scholar of Sikhism. Now, erudite here means having or showing great knowledge of learning. You know, he was an erudite scholar of Sikhism. He delved deep in Gurbani and, like Saint Paul of Christianity, codified the utterance of the 10th master in the form of Rehatname and Tankhaname. His study of Gurbani was very intensive, and his Persian verses convey the import of Gurbani. That is why Rababis often quote the verse of Pai Nand Lal to elucidate the concept contained in the Gurbani. Most of his writings are in Persian, except a few like Jot Vigas, which is written in Punjabi, and his major works are as I'm going to say now. So, Zindagi Name, Diwane Goya, Tausif Sana, Ganj Name, Jot Bigas, which is written both in Punjabi and in Persian, Rehat Name, Tankha Name, Dastur ul Insha, and Arz ul Alfaz. These are his major, his writings, his major works. So now his poems are always full of piety and mysticism. Piety here means quality of being religious. He was known to poetry as Goya, which further means one who speaks out. His work contains his personal spiritual experience and in many ways explains the spirit of Gurbani. Now a little bit about his personal life. He was born in Ghazni, a city in Afghanistan, and as a boy he was very brilliant, but apart from his good knowledge of Persian and Arabic languages, he gained an insight into the temporal and spiritual values of life. His parents died very young when he was in his 20s, so life wasn't easy. And later on, he married a Sikh woman and was very much impressed by the thoughts and the spiritual values depicted in the verses of Guru Granth Sahib that was rendered by her. And then he moved to India from Ghazni and attended Aurangzeb's court. So one time when he was in the court, Emperor Aurangzeb asked a question. He asked the exposition of a certain ayat. He wanted them to explain that ayat from the Holy Quran. Various Mohammedan priests expounded it, but the emperor was not convinced. He wasn't happy for what they told him. So the interpretation presented by Pai Nand Lal had explicated it. What he wanted to hear, he explained it, he analyzed it, he developed it in such a detail that he was very much impressed. And he was very much impressed by his sense of philosophy. So he commented, the emperor commented, Aurangzeb commented, why such a learned and intelligent person had not come in the folds of Islam as yet. So then Pai Nand Lal suspected his motives, and he escaped from there, and he came to Anandpur Sahib. So while he was there, this next para is about that, while Paiji did create exquisite poetry while he was in the court of emperor, yet he did not gain much prominence. A diamond remains obscured, covered in the dust, till it is captured by the vision of a shrewd assayer who can see who he is. And Guru Sahib, of course, when he presented himself at the celestial and temporal court of Guru Gobind Singh, he tendered and recited his epic poem Bandagi Name, an ode to worship. It overwhelmed Guruji aesthetically, and he wrote a couplet at the back of the book, whose cup is filled with nectarous aqua, he gets the epistle of life revealed to him. And the name Zindagi Name, the epistle of life, was assigned to the book. So Guru Sahib did change the name from Bandagi Name to Zindagi Name. And he wrote in the back of the book in Persian, which say, Zi ab heva purshud chu jam Zindagi nama shuda za naam. This is what Guru Sahib wrote in the back of the book. Pai Nandlal ranks with the galaxy of Sufi poets of Iran like Hafiz and Maulana Rum. He represents Sikhism in the genre of Sufi literature, as his verses are inspired by Gurbani. Here are the few examples of similarity between Pai Nandlal's ghazals and those of Hafiz and Maulana Rum. Pai Nandlal writes, Goya khamosh bashke, shudaye ishke yar, ta'an siyar ast az, sare khud wa name kunem. He says, Goya, be silent, so that the secret of intense love may not be disclosed from our head. Similarly, Hafiz writes, Badarde ishq, basaz khamosh, sho Hafiz ramuz-e ishq, Mukun fash peshe ahal eakul, which means, Hafiz, make harmony with intense love and be silent. Do not divulge enigma of love before the sagacious people. So these are the similarity between their writings. The book Diwan-e Goya consists of 61 ghazals and 19 rubayats, and a few baits from the readers to perceive the transcendental mind of Pai Sahab, which has no boundaries. The metaphoric universe of ghazals through de-automized psyche produces wise passiveness, mental silence, and always hold the attention of the readers. This work contains his personal spiritual experience and in many ways explains the spirit of Gurbani. We do get wonderstruck at the beautitude of Goya's expressions. He takes us to the oceanic stage of relating, responding, and becoming through his rubaiyat and urges us to cultivate our own gardens of love. And the language of Pai Nandlal's poetry is fathomlessly strange, enigmatic, and takes us to the other kind of seeing, and it helps us to dissolve our ego through I am. It helps us to dissolve our egos. He wrote in Persian, in every word his soul dances. His soul dances. And love plays on the harp of the heart. For nearly 300 years, millions of people have shed pearls of love tears, moved by the songs of Goya. People, we do feel it in our hearts. His poems, like life, flow from one to the other. There is continuity of thoughts and emotions in such a manner that the first 9 poems put together make a unity of experience, which can only be described as an ecstasy. I would like to mention the 6th ghazal here, where he mentions, if the heart is full of compassion, my friend, you are already in his lap. And with this omnipotent vision, his glimpse all around can be enshooted. Everywhere is his glimpse, and without his glimpse, what good is the existence? That is ghazal number 6. Punjabi च दा मतलब आ है, जे दिल समझण वाला होवे तां सज्जण उसदी गल वकड़ी विच है, अते अख जेकर वेखण वाली होवे तां हर पासे दीदार ही दीदार है. He writes in Persian, Dil agar dana bavad andar kinarish yar hast, chashm gar bina bavad dar har taraf didar hast. So we can relate this with Gurbani as such. So he writes, Dil agar dana bavad andar kinarish yar hast. मैं मन तू जोत स्वरूप है, अपना मूल पछाण. Then he says, Chashm gar bina bavad dar har taraf didar hast. Jahan pekha, tahan tu hi basna. Guru Granth Sahib diyan lines. So the mystic thought in Goya flows from poem to poem. And the result in the spiral of, the results is the spiral of emotions that we feel. It has its swirls and eddies and takes man down the stream of consciousness. At the end stands the great experience for what we call awareness, realization of the ultimate light, beyond which lies the realms of darkness, darkness of non-existence. Here the readers feel the beauty of the Simran, love for the Almighty, moving up to a different consciousness, all in one kind of feeling, like you feel all kind of feelings, everything in once. Goya was among the master poet who could put in verse what he felt within. Like he could put it in writing what he felt from within. And like the entirety of his self, laid at the sacred feet of the great Guru, the beloved, Guru Gobind. He never mentioned his name, but that's who he's mentioning, he's getting the inspiration from. And no doubt, those who surrender the self master the world. That's a very strong sentence. Those who surrender the self master the world. This is the character of those who experience what we call vajd, among mystics and Sufis and saints. Vajd is the inner nature of what we call realization of oneness, of ultimate extinction of duality. Thus man becomes one with God and ultimately one with his creation. True realization dawns and the blinkers of duality fall, and the lightness of oneness dispels the dark of ultimate ignorance. It is this experience ecstatic which the first 9 poems encompass as a unit of light. You can feel those in the first 9 poems, that energy. Goa is now deep in the realm of the subconscious. After those, a flood of emotions has stirred even the hardest of the human subsoil. The poet now becomes the cauldron of ecstatic experience, and his inner self cries out, "Give me my beloved. I want to unite. Give me my beloved." Pai Sahib has shown the meaning of Simran, love and dedication. It's not bonded to a certain time or era. If you have that fire in you, that energy is going to find you. But you have to show true love, dedication, sacrifice to attain the non-dual stage in yourself. Simran allows us to tune into our own identity and simultaneously let go of the focus on ourselves, to cut through our ego and move through our limitations and experience bliss. That's what Simran does to us. It is the wave of love for universal energy that keeps on flowing within ourselves. How I conclude that? I conclude by saying that in Bhai Nandlal's Diwani Goya, a clear distinction is drawn between God and man. Although the wave and ocean both consist of water, yet there is a great difference between them. I am one wave of thee, who art an endless sea. I am one wave of thee, who art an endless sea. Thou art as distinct from me as heaven is from earth. That's a very strong feeling that we get from the book. So I am one wave, just a one wave of in your endless sea. With this, I end my summary, and I hope you will all feel encouraged to read this amazing masterpiece written by an amazing writer and poet, Bhai Nandlal Goya. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you for your intensely passionate and I would say, the love that Bhai Nandlal Goya, had for Guru Gobind Singh Sahib. It created a love episteme, and the passion and the energy associated with love episteme you wonderfully presented on the stage today, Gurpreet Kaur. Bhai Nandlal Goya, he wore the kirpan for Guru Gobind Singh in the form of his love-filled writings. There was once an occasion where Bhai Nandlal Goya wanted to wear the kirpan for Guru Sahib and asked for him to allow him to become a part of a war. But Guru Gobind Singh said that Bhai Nandlal, "Toda kalam hi todi kirpan hai." And by Nandlal Goya's creativity and mysticism and reverence all bowed at the holy feet of the 10th Master. And he saw Guru Gobind Singh as the epistome of the supreme consciousness, and both to him were interconvertible. In the physical form, he saw supreme consciousness manifest in Guru Gobind Singh and vice versa. So there was absolutely no boundaries in his mind. And Gurpreet Kaur informed us a lot of wealth of information today, and she's researched the topic very well. I congratulate her for her effort. With this, we will now move on to the second talk of our session. It is a recording that we will play for you. Manjot Kaur has recorded a talk on Ashtavakra Gita, which it's a work written by the sage Ashtavakra. So let's see what Manjot Kaur has to share with us.
Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the book Ashtavakra Gita by the sage Ashtavakra. The Ashtavakra Gita or Song of Ashtavakra is a classical text in the Advaita Vedanta tradition in the form of a dialogue between the sage Ashtavakra and Janaka, the king of Mithila, on the nature of self or Atman, reality and bondage. It offers a radical version of non-dualistic philosophy. According to Osho, Ashtavakra Gita is such a spiritual truth which is pure, transcendental and beyond time and space. To understand this, you have to drop yourself unconditionally. You have to descend yourself into the depths of meditation. I find the book Enlightenment, the Only Revolution by Osho, can be read along with this Gita to have a better understanding of the text. Osho beautifully blends the stories of great souls like Buddha, Lao Tzu, Zarathustra, Krishna to provide an essence of this song of Ashtavakra. In a conversation between Janaka and Ashtavakra pertaining to the deformity of his crooked body, Ashtavakra explains that the size of a temple is not affected by how it is shaped, and the shape of his own body does not affect himself or his Atman. The book comprises of 20 chapters. On the question of knowledge of truth, liberation and renunciation, Ashtavakra says that knowledge or salvation can be only attained through the realization of pure consciousness. You are neither earth, water, fire, air, or ether. Know yourself or Atman as witness of all these and different from them. Know that you are not your body. Virtue and vice, pleasure and pain are modes of the mind, and yourself is independent of them. You are neither the doer nor the enjoyer. You are independent of this duality. Dualism is the root of suffering. The world is just an illusion. On the question of self or pure consciousness, he tells that the self is the witness, all-pervading, perfect, free, one, consciousness, actionless, not attached to any object, desireless, ever tranquil. As per his opinion, a wise man feels equal in pain and pleasure, equal in hope and in disappointment, equal in life and death, and he is complete in himself. Alternatively, I am in all beings, and all beings are in me. To know this knowledge, and then there is neither renunciation, acceptance, or cessation of it. So there is nothing to be attained or abandoned. The world takes place in the infinite ocean of my own self, which is also created by mind. Therefore, the world does exist only in my imagination, but I am supremely peaceful and formless, and I remain as such. On bondage and liberation, Ashtavakra says, bondage is when the mind longs for something, grieves about something, rejects something, holds on to something, is pleased about something or displeased about something. Bondage is when the mind is tangled in one of the senses. On the other hand, liberation is when the mind does not long for anything, grieve about anything, reject anything, or hold on to anything and is not pleased about anything or displeased about anything. Liberation is when the mind is not tangled in any of the senses. Next, what is Supreme Self? Realizing I am not the body, nor is the body mine. I am awareness. One attains the supreme state and no longer remembers things done or undone. Realizing that all this varied and wonderful world is nothing, one becomes pure receptivity, free from inclinations, and as if nothing existed, one finds peace. You are not the body, nor is the body yours, nor are you the doer of actions or the reaper of the consequences. You are eternally pure consciousness, the witness, in need of nothing. Desire and anger are objects of the mind, but the mind is not yours, nor ever has been. You are choiceless, awareness itself, and unchanging. Seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, tasting, speaking, and walking about, the great souled man who is freed from trying to achieve or avoid anything is free indeed. Considerations like I am this or I am not this are finished for the yogi who has gone silent, realizing everything is myself. For the yogi who has found peace, there is no distraction or one pointedness, no higher knowledge or ignorance, no pleasure and no pain. Ashtwakar emphasizes on the nature of a child to provide a glimpse of indifference to the worldly things. Yogi lives like a child, free from all kinds of aversions. He who is always contented, who is unattached to any object, whoever enjoys solitude. He has obtained the fruit of spiritual knowledge and the practice of yoga. He who has this spiritual knowledge, whose mind is absorbed in contemplation and who is contented, lives in bliss whether seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, or eating. By inner freedom, one attains happiness. By inner freedom, one reaches the supreme. By inner freedom, one comes to absence of thought. By inner freedom to the ultimate state. Happy he stands, happy he sits, happy sleeps, and happy he comes and goes. Happy he speaks, and happy he eats. This is the life of a man in the state of absolute stillness. About the state of transcendence, Ashtwakra tells that the wise man has the joy of being complete in himself and without possessions, acting as he pleases, free from duality and rid of doubts, and without attachment to any creature. A man at peace does not run off to popular places or to the forest. Whatever and wherever, he remains the same. There is no being or non-being, no unity or dualism. What more is there to say? Nothing proceeds out of me. Thank you.
That was Manjot Kaur giving her us insights from the epic work Ashtavakra. And as one could see, there were a lot of similes one could draw with the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita as well. That a muni is the same in pain or happiness. That liberation is being not tangled by the desire. That karma, if one is in life's form, is bound to do karma, but the karma should not be done with an anticipation of a reward or a punishment, or that a yogi is like a child that's unaffected by anything, and a man of peace remains the same everywhere, no matter he is nestled in a forest or in a house. So plenty of important wisdom for times. And it's again, I appreciate the research that Manjot has done. And with that, we will now move on to the final leg of our session today. We will be talking about, I'll be presenting a book review on a certain section of Lehran Dehar. And the book is on Pai Veer Singh's poetry, and there are several sections in the book, and I've taken one of the sections in the book and I've expounded on that. So I'll take a brief few seconds break to just grab my laptop from there. So, as I was mentioning, that the talk today is on Jeevan Ki Hai, which is an excerpt from Lehran De Har, a work by Paisa Paivir Singh. This book was first published in 1921 and it's a poetic work. And this book enlists poetry in 8 parts. Part 1 is Trail Tupke, aka Dewdrops. Part 2, Jeevan Ki Hai, what is life? Part 3, Dil Tarang, the chord of the heart. Part 4, Bulbul Terahi, the nightingale and the traveller. Part 5, Pushpavati and Chandravat. And part 6 is Bismil More, Hailworthy Peacock. Part 7 is Fundya Tota, meaning the bruised parrot. And part 8 is Godavari Geet, the songs of Godavari. Before we go into what the poem is about, I want to shine some light on the conditions, the historical conditions around the time that Paisa Paivir Singh wrote this work. You see, after the reign of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, there came to be the onslaught of colonial model in Punjab. In the 1800s, we knew that, in India, we had the British rule. So there was onslaught of colonial model in Punjab, and in the establishment of such model, several new types of institutions had arisen within India. The prevalent feudalized institutions and those driven by the Punjabi cultural context, owing to the effect of colonialism, underwent significant changes. And then on the other side, we had the reformist movements that were arising amongst the various cultures in Punjab, and they were trying to protect those cultures from the effect of colonialism. So this was the sort of landscape, the social landscape at that time. Paivir Singh, while being present in such an ecosystem and withstanding the prevailing resistances, along with others, attempted to re-identify and resurrect the pure, pristine Sikh models of thought and conduct, while there were so many influences around him that were trying to deviate the Sikh context. A little bit about the colonial model, the colonialism and the feudalized model. The colonial model inherits its characteristics from colonialism. Colonialism tends to treat time as a strict linear history. It promotes human centricism as distinct from creator centricism. It holds rationality as a key and sovereign center in of itself. It respects evolutionism, and it treats occurrences and events as the outcome of cause and effect, which are strictly linearly placed. So it basically denotes that any occurrence in time is bound to be connected with certain cause that happened before in time, so on and so forth. So it perceives time as a linear sequence of cause and effect. The feudalized model, it anchors in anarchy as its foundation principle, and there is a subtle placement of raciality within. The feudalized model, it does not pursue an intellectual engagement with matter. Rather, it exploits the cultural norms and tries to subjugate and hold matter tightly under its anarchic domain. Now, Paivir Singh did not ingrain the influences from the colonial and feudal forces, even though they were pretty rampant during his times. He stood up the ground to present or basically revive the model, a new model which was prevalent in the Sikhism, the space of Sikhism, but it had gone a bit incognito in this stage. Via the poem Jeevan Ki Hai Kavita, Paisa Paivir Singh gives a poetic response to the colonial and feudalistic models. He just did not give the response at that time, but his response stands as true as it was a century ago as it is today. His model originates from the pristine Sikh experience anchored in Sakhi name, Namras, which in turn orchestrates a unique relationship with the nature around us and how we can glean models of thinking from nature itself. Before I delve into the poem's content and its summary, I want to talk about Paivir Singh. Paisa Paivir Singh was born in Amritsar in December 5, 1872. As we've talked about, he was a major force in shaping the Sikh and Punjabi culture, language, and politics. Paivir Singh was a chief exponent of the Singh Sabha movement. The Singh Sabha movement aimed to propagate true Sikh religion and restore Sikhism to its original glory, to write and distribute historical and religious books on Sikhism, and to promote Gurmukhi and Punjabi through magazines and media when none of this was prevailing in those times. So he was a true pioneer of a unique accord who brought back Sikhism on the landscape of that century. The movement sought to reform Sikhism and bring back into the Sikh fold the apostates who had converted to other religions from Sikhism, and it wanted to interest the influential British officials in furthering the Sikh community. Some of the leading institutions that brought this renaissance about included the Chief Khalsa Diwan, the Sikh Educational Society, Khalsa College Amritsar, and the Punjab and Sindh Bank. They all owe their origin to Paivir Singh. Furthermore, he also founded the Khalsa Tract Society, which was made available under the title Nirguniyara, which was a low-cost publication when no publications prevailed as much on Sikh theology, history, and philosophy. Through his journal, Paisab established contact with an ever-expanding circle of readers. He used the Nirguniyara as a vehicle for his own self-expression. And we all know that, he made the Khalsa Tract Society, he started the Khalsa Samachar, and he of course made immense contributions to Sikh literature. His works in the novel genre include Sundari, Bijay Singh, Satwant Kaur, and others. And all of these reminisced the heroic period, the pre-18th century period of the Sikh history. Through these novels, he made available to his readers models of courage, fortitude, and human dignity that Sikh way of living ushered for the civilization. Paisab championed the Sikh identity in a way that did not devalue other religions. He reprimanded the violation and destruction of the Hindu idols in Kashmir in his book Avantipur de Khandar. The novel Subhagi da Sudar, Hathi Baba Naud Singh, popularly known as Baba Naud Singh, shares with the epic Rana Surat Singh a theme in which Paisab was very much interested in. And that was a theme of a widow's desperate urge for a reunion with her dead husband. He speaks from the pedestal of womanhood, and he does a fantabulous job doing that. Paisab's other poetic works include Dil Tarang, Taral Tupke, Lehran de Har, Matak Khulare, Bijliyan de Har, Mere Saiyan Jio. Through these works, he paved the way for emergence of the Punjabi poem in the mainstream in a big way. He revised and enlarged Gyani Hazara Singh's dictionary, Sri Guru Granth Kosh, originally published in 1898. And then he published editions of some of the old Sikh texts such as Sikhan di Bhagatmala, Prachin Pant Prakash, Puratan Janam Sakhi, and Sakhi Pothi. He also annotated Santokh Singh's Sri Guru Pratap Suraj Granth. Paisab was a nominated member of the Punjab Legislative Council in 1952. He was also nominated a member of the National Academy of Letters in 1954. He was awarded the Sahitya Academy Award in 1955 and the Padma Bhushan Award in 1956. Due to the immensity of his contributions to the society in his lifetime, he is recognized as the Yug Purush. a man who contributed to the civilizational tracts of a whole era and continues to do so. And he elevated the selves of teeming millions to a state of spirited lifehood. Pai Veer Singh casted his influence on several thinkers and writers of his times and beyond, Professor Puran Singh being one of them. The beacons he established in terms of works he wrote, the organizations he established, and the influences he exerted far and wide, all in all contributed to the establishment of Sikh people's culture on the land of Punjab that went a long way in lessening the impact of feudalism and colonialism. And these beacons continue to beckon at us today. Pai Sahib left for his heavenly abode on June 10, 1957. Now, in as far as what goes on in this poem called Jeevan Ki Hai. So in this, we see that there's a young lady and she seeks to know the meaning and purpose of life. And this question arises in herself with a rather painful pang. What is life? What is the purpose of life? She recognizes that she's living a life, and several before have lived the life, but she does not understand why is she living and why did they live. The question smolders her inside and pricks a pain, and she seeks to understand the reason for life. And she is so disenchanted and she's in pain and she's painfully pondering over the questions, and as she's doing so, she comes to stop by a serene pond that she sees is besmeared with the heavenly beauty. The waters are blue and there's certain kind of life in those waters. Even though they are at the verge of an ocean, there's still some life in there, and that inspires her to stop by. She inquires of the pond. She says, why is the pond so happy, and how is it able to thrive in absence of any desires, and as to why is it showing celestial colors? She asks the pond to reveal the secret to her as to what is life. At this juncture in the poem, Pai Veer Singh elevates the pond and subtly characterizes it as Sarovar. And he pens down its response to the seeker. And this is what the Sarovar says to the lady. Fir ana, 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 ana. Firji, fir ana. The lady heaves a sigh and leaves the scene with a resolve in her heart to come back. Then, during the ambrosial hours of a certain day, she comes back to the Sarovar and makes the same inquiry. She sees that now, this time, atop the water surface of the Sarovar is sprawling an emergence of circular lotus leaves that are bedaubed with water and droplets and dews. And the illuminating rays of the sun are gradually increasing their radiance, and the ambrosial breezes are flowing gently. And she again poses the same inquiry to the Sarovar. The Sarovar responds likewise, says, Ami fir tu firar tu fir ami, fir ami tu ami. Well, the lady comes back a third time, and through a teary veil throbbing in her eyes, she beholds the scene, this time, of the pond showcasing a barrage of long lotus stems which are perching atop the water surface. And they have their buds growing, and the buds are growing, but they're gracefully crowning downwards. She implores the Sarovar to answer her question again, and the Sarovar responds, Firar, fir ami, ami firar tu fir ami. Well, with her neck dropped akin to that of buds, she leaves the scene. When she comes back the fourth time, she sees the lotus buds standing erect with their tops facing the skies. And she wonders why they are in such a position and what do they gain by being in such position forever, gazing at the sky, gazing at the sun. What is the purpose of all that? And she again seeks those answers. The Sarovar repeats likewise, as it had repeated in the previous 3 occasions. The next time, though, when she visits the Sarovar, she notices that the buds of the lotus plants have opened up and are blossoming with surreal radiance, and they're emitting a splendor of vibrant colors. The view bespeaks of happiness and delight, and it touches the internal vibes of the visitor somewhere. The youthfulness of the flower, the display of their inherent joyance, a joyance which was their internal property and not the outcome of any external triggers. Their nonchalant demeanors literally sprawled across the whole of Sarovar. The radiance made them appear as the very multitude of suns that had arisen over the celestial surface of the Sarovar. The sheer grandiosity of such spectacle overpowered her fully. She transitioned into a state of inebriated bliss where her senses choked with saturation. She had no further any epistemic seeking, any seeking of knowledge. The act of her probing for knowledge by calling out the forces of logic and explanation had ceased to exist. It is at this stage that she comes in complete harmony with the exaltation of the top order, such that she becomes the exaltation herself. So the exaltation and the delight that the Sarovar was showcasing, the same exaltation comes in her. She becomes that exaltation. And at this stage, life and its becoming in its blossoming becomes her. So life becomes the same as blossoming. And her blossomed self resonates life. And she and the blossoming, she and life, blossoming and life, they all become transparent. So the question ceases to exist. So Paisa Veer Singh's poem, Jeevan Ki Hai, it bespeaks of a phenomena which appears to reflect a fundamental tenet of Sikh philosophy. This tenet is what Professor Himmat Singh characterizes as extra-semantic epistemology. You see, epistemology, as we know, is the theory of knowledge, especially with regards to methods, validity, and scope. It is the investigation of what distinguishes a belief from opinion, and semantics is the branch of linguistics and logic concerned with meaning. Professor Himmat Singh introduces this term, extra-semantic epistemology, in his magnum opus work, Mega Vision, Mega Philosophy, in the chapter 11 of part 1 of this book. Professor Himmat Singh says, Guru Nanak did not carry expert-like proficiency of traditional abstruseness. He says, Guru Nanak's goshtas are full of spiritually pragmatic niceties, but not of abstract concernless. He further says, nor did Guru Nanak utter any questionnaire-like aspects or any propositional disputatives. Professor Himmat Singh recognizes and perceives Guru Nanak's stone at Makkah as extra-semantic, where Guru Nanak says, I'm travelled, toiled a wreck. Please drag my feet thitherwards, wherewards does not occur Allah's house, the Kaaba. So where is the direction where one would see the absence of Allah's house? Nowhere. There is no such direction. So this extra-semantic epistemological manner of Guru Nanak therefore appears to be emulated by the Sarovar, where the Sarovar does not answer the seeker's inquiry with a logical discourse, but prods the seeker with an ask that sets out the seeker to ultimately experience a learning. By experiencing a learning that is triggered within when a state of internal resonance occurs, the heavy probing nature of abstruse discourses, it gets defecated. Because these discourses, they perpetuate forever in cause and effect, but they do not ever afford a learning that can come coterminous with real living. Veer Singh's elevation of the pond to Sarovar denotes the pond's Sarovar-like disposition. By dipping ourselves in Sarovar, we realize an evolutionary state that erases our state of perplexity, and this perplexity comes to us owing to our discordant state of living. And I say discordant state of living because by and large, all of us, we live in response to external forces. We live by society's norms and expectations and the routineness of countless chores, wherein none of these really act as vehicles to really blossom the life of our souls. The Sarovar's geospatial location, that is, its proximity to the Shabad Guru, instills in the Sarovar the life-imparting spirit which graces the partaker with pristineness of life. The lotus pond of the poem similarly reverberates grace to the lady, to the visitor, to the seeker. In the end, I'd like to quote Khalil Gibran, where Gibran says, "He threshes you to make you naked, and he sifts you to free you from your husks." This is what Gibran writes of love. And Pai Saab is our figurative father. To him I address the word Pitaji, much the way our many sisters and foremothers in Amritsar and adjoining areas addressed him. So Pitaji is writing about awareness of love. They consistently elevate our consciousness. So I earnestly submit a recommendation to this audience to read Lehran De Har, of which Jeevan Ki Hai is a constituent work, or for that matter, any of his works that you can lay your hands on. Reading his works reveals life spirit to our lives, and we could all enrich ourselves by such gifts. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So, with that, with those words, we have actually come to the last stage of our session today. Continued thanks to all the speakers and all the participants and the audiences who are with us, and they are helping us continue the journey and progress this journey. Without in the absence of any one of you, this journey will not progress forward. So we continue to look forward to having you alongside us, and we look forward to now the next session, in which we will have another set of speakers present their talks and reviews. With that, I would like to invite you to have some refreshments in the room, and we will adjourn it for now. Again, on behalf of Mata Tripta Gurukar and Nath Pragas USA, I'd like to thank you all for coming to this occasion today. We will see you for our next session in the first week of September. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.